Hello YouTube, welcome back over to Gaming House, and the video today I have planned is a top 10 monsters I like to see for Monster Hunter World from the previous games. And what I think is kind of different from this one compared to, say, like the other YouTubers that are covering Monster Hunter World is I haven't played the other Monster Hunter games. I've known of them for a while, and my only exposure is when they did a tiny crossover with Metal Gear Peace Walker, and even then it was only Rathalos and Tigrex that you fought there, and it was only 2 missions, and it's more of a cross-promotional thing. And even then, I only played Metal Gear Peace Walker when it was ported over to consoles. I didn't play Monster Hunter when it was on PS2. I didn't play it on the handhelds. I didn't play it on the Nintendo consoles. So I think it's kind of interesting to have someone else who hasn't played the other games since like day 1 or Generations or 3 to come in, do a little bit of research, look at some of these monsters, and pick and choose what they want to see come out. Heads up, I did look at other top 10s and all that, and part of this is influenced by that, which, of course, if you go and look at any top 10s of favorite monsters or what monsters they want to come over here, a lot of it is like flagship monsters or so. So it is partially influenced by that, but again, this is my own opinion and someone who hasn't played the game, so let's go ahead and just jump right into it. First one I got here is I got the Tigrex, which of course is one of the flagship monsters. It's one of the earlier on ones. And I would also like the variation of the Molten Tigrex to come with it. Part of the reason is Tigrex is just, from what I can see, is just super aggressive, fast, doesn't have any elements on the base form of the Tigrex. The roar can actually do some damage to you, which is kind of unique in its own sense. And if you want to compare it to anything, it's pretty much like a Nergigante, except not Elder Dragon. And I think that would be interesting just to have something that is like base, very aggressive, fast, but has like no elements compared to everything else that's similar to the Tigrex. Say like if Nergigante is, well, he's a dragon, doesn't really use elements. But say like Tobi-Togashi is thunder and Odogaron is inflicts bleed, whereas Tigrex just doesn't do anything. And part of the reason I want the Molten variant is now you take the Tigrex with all his super fast aggression, and now he has blast element. I think that would be interesting just to include more variants also from that, which I didn't research into, because everything's got like actually a lot of variants from the past games. It's not just the Azure, I'm calling blue, Brurathalos, oh god, I can't say words now, and the Pancrathian. Next up on my list is Nargacuga. And that's because, again, another flagship monster. And admittingly, from what I've seen, the attack design and style is pretty much the same as the Tigrex. Except I believe, depending on it, it's like he can inflict poison. He's just a really cool looking monster, in all honesty. It's a really cool monster if it is similar to Tigrex in a lot of ways, at least from my opinion. I mean, obviously, if I had played the games, I could see how they'd function differently from like watching a few clips here and there and all that. It seems like he's very similar to the Tigrex, except slightly faster, different attacks, uses like his tail more often. And again, depending on it, I hope like the base one is not what I mixed the stats of, but he can inflict poison as well. Next up is something that I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen any of, and that's like any form of like giant insect or so. So I picked, from the first one I picked, the first name I saw from when I was looking through crustaceans and bugs was Nerscylla. And Nerscylla is pretty much this giant spider bug thing, and it just inflicts all kinds of ailments. It inflicts poison. It can inflict sleep onto characters. It also has web attacks that like trap hunters in place so it can come up and attack them, and then just start keep inflicting poison and sleep, and all kinds of just nastiness. So I think that'd be interesting to have in there as someone that also fills in that niche, which some of my choices are inspired also by that, is filling in certain niches that I think are missing from the current Monster Hunter roster. And I think this one kind of fills in more of a poison, sleep attacks, and just be interesting just to have another giant bug monster. I say another, but there's not one in Monster Hunter. But we need one. Surprisingly, again, don't have one. Next up, I got oh man, this is one I haven't practiced saying the name a few times, so I'm probably going to butcher it. Astalos. And first off, thunder is their main attribute, so of course it fills the thunder niche. We don't got too many thunder ones in here. I think we got Kirin, Tobi-Togashi, and there might be one more that I'm not thinking off the top of my head, but there's not a whole lot of them that do straight thunder. And I'm particular of just like being a straight up cool looking monster, as well as with a cool armor set. It's got like glowy bits, and I'm a sucker for any kind of armored like fantasy or sci-fi that's got glowy bits on it. He is also a rival of Rathalos, and I've had to do a lot of farming with Rathalos and Rathian for like swords and stuff. And I kind of want a monster that when they do turf wars to kind of beat up Rathalos, because Rathalos has been rather mean to me lately. And next one is one I really fell in love with the moment I looked him up. Was, again, this is going to be a name I butcher. Glavenus. God, names. But he's basically a T-Rex looking motherfucker with a sword tail. A motherfucking sword tail. Who does fire breath attacks and can also inflict bleed, which is again another thing that is kind of missing from Monster Hunter. Currently, it's only Odogaron who can inflict bleed status. But just the way this guy looks and how he functions is really cool. His tail has three states to it. It has dull, sharpened, and heated. And he can get it to those states by like sharpening it on the environment. He could also just put it in between his teeth to sharpen it. And when it's heated, not only is it also doing additional damage to you, but that's also the only time you can actually sever his tail, is when the tail is heated and on fire. And another point to add to him that I would like to see him come for is just because in like the opening cinematic or so, where he gets into a fight with a Rathian and it just cuts off the wing thorns on it. And I think it'd be interesting for turf wars. If every time Glavenus gets into a fight with a turf war, it has a high random chance of like breaking parts of the opposing monster it gets into a turf war with. Another name that I am going to butcher, hopefully, maybe not, is Mizosune? God damn Japanese names. And this is just a pretty ass looking dragon. One that screams instantly to put into the Coral Highlands. Simply because I don't think there's a whole lot in the Coral Highlands. Base-wise, I think Coral Highlands and Rotten Vale are pretty much at the same for monster counts, are roughly the same. But this one just screams Coral Highlands. It also does water element attack, which is another thing I think is missing a whole lot. I think it's just the darn it, dying. The giant fish. I'm not going to bother to try and pronounce that. That'll mispronounce every time. But that's the only one that I know off the top of my head that does straight water damage in Monster Hunter World. So having another monster that does water attacks would be nice. And it just seems very interesting with how the bubbles and everything else function. Like, you know, they trip up hunters and everything else. Would be interesting to see. You're going to hear me say interesting to see a lot. If you're old enough to drink, you play a drinking game with this. Pretty much the rest of this list are Elder Dragons, which I know some people are hurting to miss on. From what I've seen is whether or not they want more Elder Dragons or just regular base monsters. With this one, I think this is one of the first ones. This is one of the two that I think could work as an event type monster, where they just kind of bring it in for like a week and a half, where they say, hey, this monster's arrived, fight it off, farm it as much as you can during this time, and it's going to be kind of like tough fight or so. And possibly not this one, but the other one I'll mention, where they could bring back raids, where apparently they've had raids before. I'm not sure which Monster Hunter it was, but it's where you can have more than 4 hunters go in to try and take down a monster. And I think this one and the other one I'll mention towards the end, that'll be one of the ones I think could possibly be raid-like. But Fatalis and the White Fatalis, this is apparently one of the OG Elder Dragons from the first one, and again, another flagship monster. And very favorable in the community. A lot of people liked Fatalis, apparently. What I found interesting was the backstory and everything about it. Apparently Fatalis is an Elder Dragon that very much hates humanity and will actually go out of its way to attack human settlements and hunters, because it does not like how we go around and committing mass genocide in the name of science. Which, you know, it's kind of makes sense, and it would also make sense if it were to show up here and try to, you know, disrupt our activities in this new world where, of course, we're going around killing a lot of things in the name of science, and it just shows up to say, hey, no, stop that. But in terms of like size and everything, Fatalis is roughly the same size as Xeno'jiiva in this game. From what I've seen, it's roughly the same size. So it'd be interesting to have him come back in this sort of event style, have him fight somewhere. I would also like the White Fatalis, just because White Fatalis is just cool looking. It's just straight up white, and when it gets enraged, there's parts of its head, neck, and belly that grow red. Also, having other versions of Elder Dragons would be pretty neat. Apparently, there are other versions of Elder Dragons, and we might get one Monster Hunter World in the form of Kieran, which I'm not excited for. Fuck Kieran. He's just not fun. He's not a fun fight. Next here I got is Amatsu. Easy one. Try harder, Japan. Or I should have picked harder ones. This is another Elder Dragon, and this one uses the water element, which is again something that we don't see a whole lot of in Monster Hunter World. It's anything that attacks with straight water. He's always floating around too. I've noticed in some of the videos that he is just like floating, and he doesn't touch the ground even when he gets like sort of like stunned and shit. Just always floating. And apparently, one of his special like background things is he controls weather. So whenever it'd be nice if whenever he shows up, if it's like say Agent Force and all that, it immediately starts raining like all the time, thunderstorms maybe in Coral Highlands. But essentially, he's just a water element. And he's not bad looking. But next up, definitely one of my favorites. The moment I also saw this next dragon right here, this next Elder Dragon, instant favorite. Valfalk, which I may or may not be saying pronounce correctly, words. But he's the Sky Combat Dragon. And this guy to me just looks so fucking cool that he uses apparently dragon energy to just propel himself in the skies. Really cool armor set. The move set, it's kind of unique. The fact that he uses like wings and his wings a lot for attacks. Like he'll try to stick you with the tips of the wings and also like try to like extend them out to kind of like whiplash you with them. But another very unique thing which I think is really cool if they bring Valfalk is apparently with his weapons, there's only 2 sharpness levels to them. For those that don't know what sharpness levels are, it goes from the least amount, which is red, yellow, green, blue, and then white being the highest. Valfalk's weapons only have white and red sharpness levels, which I just think is pretty damn unique. That you only get two sharpness levels. You go from the best sharpness level to the worst sharpness level. I think people can make some interesting builds off of that. The next up, the last one I got on my list, besides some honorable mentions, is again this is an Elder Dragon I think would work for a raid style event, and again also an event style thing where they just kind of bring them in for a week or 2 at a time to kind of like spike interest and everything else. Find them as much as you can during this time. As Dalamadur. And Dalamadur is literally the biggest monster in the Monster Hunter world. By like no contest to anyone else. And to also put in perspective, if you haven't looked up like the Easter egg for it, Rotten Vale, like most of that map is the corpse of a Dalamadur. And yeah, that's all I got for it. He's just a big ass monster, and I'd like to see what they can do with now the new engine on consoles, because they made him. He's a pretty damn big monster, and that was on, of course, like less powerful engines on handhelds, and now we got a console. Let's bring this guy in, see what happens. I'm not sure where they put him. They'd have to like make a whole new area or try to pick an existing one where we can fight him, because I don't think he's going to really work on the conventional maps that are currently out. Now some honorable mentions. Some of the ones that like I saw them, they're pretty damn cool, but I'm not sure if they would like work out. And fuck it, it's my opinion. Narcakos. God, probably said that wrong too. This is another Elder Dragon. This one is straight up like, just judging from the images right here, the image is this guy's covered all in bones, so he just screams like an Elder Dragon that's in the Rotten Vale chilling. And apparently, whatever the tentacles that you see there, those aren't actual heads. He's not like a Hydra, but he just looks kind of like a Hydra. There's actual like tentacles that are out. He can, depending on what is covered in him, he can inflict all kinds of different ailments, from like poison, paralysis, thunder, etc. He could just do like a whole spectrum. And again, it just screams, fight me in the Rotten Vale. Another one is a Zinogre, and this is Thunderwolf. He looked pretty cool. And again, he was also thunder damage, so I thought this would be another Another one that'd be nice to fill in the Thunder slot, but I like the other guy a lot more, the dragon-looking one, the Stalos. And of course, Zinogre is another flagship monster, which you can see in a lot of people's top 10s or so, or at least like he gets mentioned a few times just because he's cool looking, and apparently he's one that's more noticeable when a fight goes on. He gets extremely harder. I used bad words there. He gets more difficult as the fight goes on. So he's one that, like, if you don't try to, like, blitz him, you're in for a fight. And then the final monster I got is Seregios. And Seregios is... I originally picked him. He was actually in the top 10 list. And then I found a Stalos, and I was like, this guy is way cooler than Seregios. So Seregios I want to put back into the honorable mentions just because Seregios is a invasive monster kind of like Bazelgeuse. Apparently when the game they were introduced into, they got displaced from their natural habitat and ended up invading and fighting a bunch of the monsters in whichever game they were in. I forgot, unfortunately. And again, I also wanted him because he fought with Rathian or Rathalos a lot. Again, they were mean to me recently, so I don't like them right now. But he also inflicts bleed, so it's another one I wanted to fill for like the bleed ailment slot. And so pretty much just picture Nodogaron with wings. Stop! Yeah, that's not a pleasant thought, is it? But that'll do it for my video. Put down in the comments what monsters you would like to see. Again, I'm a guy that hasn't played the other ones. The Monster Hunter's got so many damn monsters from the past games, and it'd be cool if they bring them over. And then also, I didn't include ones from other areas and all that I looked up because Monster Hunter World currently doesn't have like the biome to support it. Like there's Leviathans and other aquatic ones that actually need like actual area of water, not just like a mud hole in the Wildspire. And we don't have a snow biome to also get any more like ice monsters really in there without it being a completely different monster. Like Legion is the only ice monster in the game. But again, that'll do it. Like, comment, subscribe, all the fun YouTube stuff. And as always, we're going to come back with a gaming house for gameplay and commentary.